Are there any late items anybody would like to add to this agenda? Okay, can I get a motion to adopt the agenda as presented? Mover and a seconder, please. Moved by Councillor Bratton, seconded by, somebody put their hand in the air. Thank you, Councillor Frizzle. All those in favor? That's enough to make it pass. We're good to go. Any declaration of no conflict of interest or pecuniary interest? Seeing none, we'll move on to adoption of the minutes, item 6.1. There is a recommendation that the minutes of the Committee of the Whole meeting held July 8th, 2025 be adopted as presented. So moved or questioned? Thank you, Councillor Sim. Seconded by Councillor Frizzle, who was here. All those in favor? And that passes. So we move straight on to new business. 8.1, Commissioner Oath Policy Direction. And this is something that I learned about a lot last week for the first time, of how this all works. So I'll turn it over, and I believe Mr. Prime is going to speak to this. So.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Let me just make sure my audio's working. Yep, sounds good. Just doing a little few many things over here at the same time.
Feel free to take your time to get to that point, because I did get us to this point pretty fast. So.
Perfect. Way ahead of me. Yes, so the purpose of bringing this draft policy to the Committee of the Whole is to get Council's thoughts and direction on kind of where we want to move with this. It has been identified by staff at the staff level for a while, and there is a bit of sort of discussion that needs to be taking place, because it is a well-utilized service, and that kind of is part of the problem. It's well-utilized. It's about 3 hours a week, sometimes more, sometimes a bit less. The background here is, by virtue of my position as a corporate officer in a local government, I am sort of appointed as a Commissioner of Oaths and Affidavits through the Evidence Act. Bit of an old-timey thing. It's not like there's extra training. It's akin to a notary, but it's kind of a lower level than that. It's really just about that position of trust that sort of other agencies can rely on. Historically, we've served sort of, a broad set of documents that can come in kind of on a case-by-case basis, sort of at the corporate officer's discretion. And that applies to both residents and non-residents. So we get people coming from Blue River, we get people coming from Upper Clearwater, Barrier will, come here for the service because it's free, we don't charge for it. We get a significant portion of these referrals from MJB. We'll say, oh yeah, you can just go and head to the district office to get that sort of document done. So because it does, take up quite a bit of time, we did feel, I did reach out to other municipalities and kind of figure out where other municipalities stood, and there just wasn't another province that does kind of what we're doing right now. And part of that is because, it's hard to get an apples to apples comparison. All these other municipalities that I got feedback from, they're large municipalities, they have law firms, they have notaries. We are definitely apart in that regard. So we don't have a Monday to Friday law firm that's here. So for all the other municipalities, it was strictly proof of life for overseas pensions, and it was for residents only. That was the reoccurring theme. That was the only thing that was really done. So yeah, it's about 3 hours per week, sometimes more. That's just the actual hours sitting down with clients on this. Obviously, if you're in the middle of writing a report, it can really kind of pull you off to the side, and you have to get back to what you were doing. And some of the times it's drop-in, sometimes it's by appointment. It really depends on the scenario. A bit of a kind of attributing factor here is because we are an ICBC auto plan agent as well. A lot of the documents I'm asked to witness come from ICBC, the statutory declarations. When somebody's trying to register an old off-road vehicle or a U-built trailer, sometimes they don't have all the registration papers that are kind of lined up for that, so they need to sort of write out a statutory declaration about how they came into purchase that, and then that'll come over my way. All I'm really doing, I'm not saying what they're saying is truthful, I'm just saying that this person is who they say they are on their ID. That's, out of everything I do, that's the limit of what I'm doing. bit of a jurisdictional scan in the staff report there. We discussed whether we could charge fees for this to kind of either, free up the time or at least generate revenue out of it. However, it is quite firm that we can't charge fees for this out of the Evidence Act. That is kind of what it is on the tin, really. The risk and liability, currently it's, assessed on a case-by-case basis. People, I would say a large portion, maybe about 40% of the people coming in are those who are doing desk order divorces. So, they're mutually agreeable divorces. They come in, you can fill it out online. They'll do all their paperwork on their end. I'm not providing any advice on those divorces. I'm just, again, verifying their ID and kind of saying that they signed it in front of me. And the significant portion of that is those cases. The liability is low because, again, it's just the ID verification process. It really will come down to what council is looking at from a service level perspective, because I do envision that if we reduce this to the proposed policy that I've attached, council is likely to probably hear about this. So that's why it kind of needs to be discussion to council in terms of what service level you are looking for. Open any questions if you have any.
Questions of Mr. Prime. Go ahead, Councillor Sim.
Of the options provided, which would staff recommend?
Thank you, Councillor Sim, through the mayor. The recommendation is that the committee of the whole recommend to council that it adopt the commissioner for the policy as drafted. And the policy starts on page 13 of your package. And ostensibly, Cole's notes is that that's restricting it. I guess I'll kind of read the.
I think what I'm asking for is which of these options relate to the policy?
The recommendation on the front page. The options would be option 1, adopt the draft policy.
Okay,
with
that's what I'm
restrictions.
asking for, because it's in there and it talks about some different services.
Yeah.
But it seems that there was a bit of a hybrid element to the policy in there. So that's
Yes.
why I wasn't quite clear on whether you were suggesting adopt or 1 or 2 because of the mention to the hybrid in there.
Absolutely. And the hybrid approach is we can apply to train additional staff as commissioners through the law branch, essentially. There can be given a limited scope, as in just signing for ICBC statutory declarations, so that the front counter staff working ICBC would be able to do that just themselves, kind of offload me having to get interrupted for it.
And supplemental,
Yep,
if I
go
may,
ahead.
on that, is what would your communication plan and timeline be?
Definitely there needs to be a communication plan reaching out to the public, kind of a broad sense of this. I wouldn't want to necessarily put it too far in the future, and then people kind of cramming everything in ahead of that, but it would likely be about 2 months, and then we would kind of make that transition over to that in terms of the policy being in effect then.
Okay, Councillor Herring.
So of the services listed in 4.6, the prohibited services, which of those do you currently provide?
As far as these services go, we already do not do real estate transactions. We don't provide any legal advice or any document preparation for any of these divorces or wills or powers of attorney. However, each of those divorces, wills, and powers of attorney have come in specifically where it's just for an ID verification, that they're just either doing an affidavit or something of that nature. So they have come in already, but not through like preparation of the document. It's a bit of a difference. But in this scenario, then, where those desk order divorces would come in, we would not be doing those.
So my concern is that that could add to the cost of any of those things. Powers of attorney, we're in a heavily seniors community, right? Powers of attorney are going to come up. Same with divorce. I mean, like, if you're having to wait for MJB or, legal counsel, that's way more expensive and could take more time, particularly if you're just trying to verify identity for documents. So I personally don't like reducing the level of service we're providing. Like, I look at that as like 3 hours a week is 3% of your time, which is, significant. But if we could offset by having another staff member trained in that, say someone who works in ICBC so they can do ICBC declarations, perhaps we can lower that 3% to a lower percentage, but not reduce the service.
Go ahead, Mr. Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
You just turned it off.
Thank you. So I've actually had a conversation with a lawyer, one of the ones practicing, who sometimes practices in town, about specifically the prohibited services listed there. And it was just a conversation. It wasn't legal advice, but the conversation, he said, is that he would recommend that we don't provide those services. And even though that lawyer is actually one of the people who sometimes refers people over here, with some of these services, they're probably the only area where some liability does creep in, right? So if there's any consideration of soundness of mind for entering into a will, for example, power of attorney, it's very challenging if they come in and we meet them and you talk to them for 2 minutes to have any sense of that. But it's also very problematic to say to residents, yeah, no, I'm sorry, we're not going to provide that service. They get very irate. So the lower level services and the ones where there's some actual, I guess, financial benefit in the long run would be the ICBC type services where there's stat decks and stuff, because we do, through our ICBC services, we do generate some revenue for the district for that. So that makes sense. Very, very low level of liability around that. But any of the actual ones that are somewhat tied to legal services, even if we're not providing legal advice, it can be challenging with those. I just also want to state that I confirm that what Olson said about the hours is true, and sometimes it is significantly more than 3 hours, and it's the drop down time where someone's in there, they want to come in and then getting back to work, right? It can be a real time suck, and it seems to be usually right close to when he's trying to get a report done, or there's a council meeting coming up or something, and then boom, there's someone sitting at the desk expecting some service level. So personally, I concur with this. I think it's good value to provide our residents the services that we can provide what are completely without liability perspective. I think that's good value. They pay Elson's wages at the end of the day, as they pay all of our wages. The services outside the area, when you see people come here specifically from Blue River, for example, because it's lower cost than going into a notary in Kamloops, that's just kind of a free rider thing, right?
Any further?
So, is there an option of scheduling this service on a weekly basis, saying, you know what, if we're going to do 3 hours capped, and the 3 hours is from noon to 3 on Thursdays, that's when Commissioner of Oath is available. So you've got a whatever document come in during that window, just to like put some bumpers on the time. Like for me, like I understand that there is a degree of legal risk. I don't see how if we've been operating one way for a while and not had any significant legal consequence, then it's perceived risk, not real risk in my mind. This is not, essentially we've already been doing this. The other thing is the lawyer who would recommend not to do this service also would profit, because he would be making money off of providing this service, and a lot more money than our Commissioner of Oath, potentially. So to me, that's somewhat of a conflict, unless he's retained his counsel. To me, I see this as a valuable service. I don't know what the rest of council sees it.
Councillor Frizzle.
I get the question is basically what Commissioner of Oath is, you are basically just verifying they are who they are. That's what it boils down to.
Councillor Fizzle through the mayor. Yes, that's correct.
So if you're signing for these real estate transactions, divorce, wills, powers of attorney, I'm wondering if maybe they're not thinking that you have more power than just that. Then
When anyone makes an appointment with me, I'm always, the first question I ask is, okay, well, what document do you have? Mm-hmm. And specifically, when it's asking for, at the end of the document, what does it specifically say? Does it say notary or lawyer? Does it say Commissioner of Oaths and affidavits at the bottom? Because if it says that, then generally, yes, I'm free to witness it. But if it doesn't say that, or if it specifically says notary, then no, I absolutely can't do it. And there's even times where a lawyer will override that and say, nope, this is my client. I need something from, they're an Albertan lawyer. I need them witnessed, but I just crossed that section out. And so I'm working with the legal team to just cross that out, put Commissioner of Oaths, because it says notary at the end of the document. So all that's to say is that, it specifically is working with them to ensure that it is and it is a case-by-case basis. Some are pretty easy, come in, stat tech, whatever, but there are, more complicated ones where, you're verifying ahead of time that I'm not wasting their time. I'm always right up at the front. I'm like, I'm not a lawyer, I'm not a notary, so I can't really provide you advice on this document. And a lot of the times that means, especially for these death order divorces, that they do it incorrectly time and time and time again. And so I see them 3 or 4 or 5 times because they have to redo the documents, and then they're coming in to get
There's
it
your
witnessed
time.
again. So, but that doesn't mean it's not, Councilor Herring's correct in terms of the value it's providing to the citizens. That's I see it every day, and they're very appreciative of the service. So that's why we're having the conversation we are.
Yeah. Further?
So, when you started doing this, what were the main documents that you were signing for? Was it all this, or was it the things that you can do, your insurance and what?
When I started the position, it was very uncertain what was necessarily supposed to be signed or not signed. It was very unclear. It's not necessarily even clear in the legislation what, as by virtue of a corporate officer position, it was unclear from other corporate officers because, like I said, other corporate officers aren't doing nearly what we're doing. However, we had a history of doing a broader sense of documents. So I did get legal advice at the time, and when I first started, and I did get the opinion that yes, you're free to sign anything within the authorities of a Commissioner of Oath. You're not restricted there. So we are operating within our legislative authority. It's just the time and the service level that's the issue.
And supplemental to that, I agree with Councillor Herring that it's something we've already been doing, and I hate to see us cut that, but I do think maybe we need to have a set time that you are available rather than always interrupting you within your jobs. It's just my opinion.
Thank you. Yeah, I agree that this is a valuable service. I'm not loving some of the things that we'd be signing off on, especially divorces and power of attorney. What this really says is that there needs to be a notary public service in this town, because the other thing that I don't think anybody's really focusing on, we could be restricting this to residents of the District of Clearwater, which still leaves 2 EA directors, our areas that we are the service community for, out in the cold. And,
Yes.
and I believe there is a notary in Valemont, but yeah, if we were to restrict this, we're already going to shut certain people off. I do like the idea of training somebody else on staff to handle the ICBC ones as well, for sure. Mr. Prime.
And thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's a really good point about the area directors, and I don't believe it. I kind of added that as an option here. However, while we can't charge for service, it is something we could arrange through the TNRD through a service level agreement to provide the service to AO residents for a certain charge per year.
And I think that's worth a conversation with them, because I don't think they would, the swear of oath part, the basic stuff. But yeah, I still think that there are certain things here that, especially power of attorney could come back and bite you pretty bad. There are horror stories about that one. And divorces are generally 2 adults of sound mind coming to something. But at the same time, that should be, at the very least, the domain of lawyers. Any further thoughts or comments? Go ahead.
I was just thinking too that if a document said it needs to be notarized or by a lawyer, then your automatic answer is no.
Correct.
You can't do it. And I don't think that a lawyer from Alberta has the power to be able to tell you to just scratch it off and,
Correct.
yeah. So that's one thing I would really stand by.
Go ahead, Councillor Bratton, and then Councillor Sim.
I do feel that education around what we provide and how we provide it is beneficial, which I do like that factor added on to this. I see all the time that people are looking for this service and they don't even understand what they need. So I get that would take a lot of time to answer questions. Part of the education process could be to let the lawyer company know that it's not okay to refer every case, like, what are you doing? having that referral system, I don't believe is okay. If there should be taking, maybe, suggest other options. I'm not sure. I do know years ago there used to be a notary in Barrier. I'm not sure if he's passed on now or not, but there was one in there. And that being said, some of these things that you end up having to see, we shouldn't be having here. But I don't know how you go about it. There needs to be a filter system to say that, we don't take that type of case here.
That could be part of the policy.
Well, and that's,
Yeah.
that's my two.
I mean, there's also the option for somebody to do a traveling notary service the same way there is a traveling lawyer service. Mr. Johnson.
I think also had already mentioned the fact that MJB is here one day a week in town. So I guess the question is, from a resident's perspective, what's the difference between booking an appointment with MJB versus booking, if we go to an appointment system with the district?
Yeah.
Really what we're doing is we're saying, well, you can book with us because we're free, or you can book with MJB. Is it really our mandate as a municipality to provide something which is outside of our bailiwick? It's allowed, but it's outside of the bailiwick of what municipalities normally do. So I guess, and that's just my thoughts on it. In particular, the list under 4.6 of prohibited services, any one of the items in there theoretically could be challenging, right? From depending what that specific item is. So, and given that there already is legal services once a week in theory in town here, wouldn't it be better to say we will continue with the ICBC ones? We will do some of those ones what are simple, easy, what people come in here to insure something, they want to be able to do a stat deck. But for any of these more complex ones, there's a lawyer in town, here's the days he's in town, it's not our job to take away his business. And maybe he's, for some of these, I suspect that the charges would be so small that maybe it's not worth his business doing them. But at the end of the day, that's how you get services into a small town, is if we don't take it, someone else can say, hey, there's a bigger need there. Maybe he needs to bump up to 2 days a week, or maybe a notary needs to come to town. So I just think I would hate to see it going with this full list of all the transactions we used to do just because we've done it in the past. I think we need to encourage private business to step up in the areas where it is truly a private business.
Yeah. Councillor Herring.
So I'm getting confused about what services we provide then. In relation to powers of attorney divorce, are we just certifying that it is the person in question for these documents, or is there another piece of sort of service that we're providing?
Councillor Herring through Mayor Blackwell. Presently, it would just be just that. It would be that the person coming in and signing the documents, checking their ID, verifying their ID. CIO Johnson was correct, though. However, it does take a soundness. You have to make sure they're mentally aware, they're cognizant. I have refused to sign power of attorneys when that wasn't the case, and that is where there is a little bit of risk involved there, for sure.
Yeah, that risk piece makes total sense to me. I didn't realize you were certifying their soundness of mind.
Yeah, not only soundness of mind, but this document, you're certifying their soundness of mind, and it's got some suggestions that you're supposed to try to determine if there's any coercion and if they're doing this of their own free will. That's way beyond.
That's way outside, yeah.
Yeah.
So, and then the other ones, for me, just looking at them, you're also making a judgment call on if you believe these people are honestly pursuing something in an honest way. And that's the one that I can see some liability risk on. I would, if I was to make this decision, or put something forward, I would like to see the basic services continue also for A and B EAs, and we have a discussion with the TNRD about throwing some funding or some resources behind that. I would also like to see potentially a secondary staff person trained to this, especially in relation to the ICBC stuff, because, you know, it's gonna happen basically at the same desk, and my only question would be on that one, can the same person that's doing that swearing of oath on a, say, U-built trailer or something, then do the transaction as well? Is there any legal risk on that?
Mayor Blackwell, I don't believe there's any restriction on doing the same transaction there.
Okay, yeah, so it's sometimes, you know, keep it clean. But yeah, I mean, the basic services, but still extend it to A and B, because I don't think cutting those people off from those things, if we're providing them as a service, through ICBC and the very basic stuff, I don't think that's fair.
The one thing to note is that the ICBC auto plan statutory declarations, that was exempt from the district residents only clause.
Okay, so you've already built that into that?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Just didn't catch that, so.
However, what wouldn't be offered to residents outside of the district declare order would be pension and proof of life documents, insurance proof as required under Section 42 of the Canada Evidence Act, minor child travel consent letters.
Yeah, and those are the ones I think we need to have a conversation with the regional district, because if we are sending people to Kamloops for those things, or to a lawyer, that's a bit tough. If we're feeling comfortable with still signing off on
Yes.
those particular things. So. Further comments or questions? Councillor Sim?
How many of these proposed exemption services could be handled with online signatures now?
Ostensibly, I guess it would depend on what each practicing law firm would do. Most of the time, since COVID kind of came and went, in theory, a lot of the law firms have been moving away from online signatures and witnessing online documents like that. I don't believe many do it anymore, to be honest.
Sorry, what don't they do anymore?
Witnessing online signatures during the
Okay,
height of,
and that's right. Generally, there is that, but the power of attorney, like, would that be it? I'm just trying to translate here what's on the government site where it does say that. So, and only trying to find a slate of options that make it easier to help our citizens transition.
Right.
And so either we find somebody in Kamloops who we can start referring things to as an online option, and maybe even being able to use that as a doorway to encourage them to come here, as was suggested by the CAO.
I don't believe, and I certainly don't believe, I don't know what documents MJB allows to sort of sign and witness online. Again, because a lot of the time they're referring their own clients here to have documents witnessed, even if it's part of their file. So.
And it would be interesting if they're referring it because it's just easier, or if it's if there's another reason, or if there's another option. But maybe that requires a little bit more to find somebody else who isn't on the verge of retirement, and connecting people. I don't know what the thoughts are about that, but the wrap up would be, what are we looking for in this policy to have brought back to us?
I'm gonna say that I think we need time to think on this one before making a decision on it.
I did hear some things about the time, like blocking those appointment times, and I think that that's really reasonable. Like, a free service is not necessarily to one of our strategic priorities, which is, making best use of our resources, and whether that's human resources. So I think that that's a very easy one to do. I don't know what that looks like practically, but I think that the point of being up and down and being distracted, that's really hard.
Yeah, I do see the point of that, but I also see if we were to train somebody from the ICBC side, the vast majority of those would go away.
But both is an option.
Yeah.
So and that goes to how do we leverage our resources within the office so that we're holding the premier services of Alsted Prime versus the easier ones that we can train somebody else up that doesn't require the charter.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And then I think that probably the idea of researching to find out about maybe a service agreement, because I think that that's hard for people who live outside the area.
So it'd be an interesting question if we could actually, TNRD residents are using our time, but if we can't charge for these services, can we charge the TNRD for that time is an interesting little,
Possibly for the new training.
yeah. I think, I think we need to think about this one, so, how would we just leave it at this without a recommendation at this point and bring it back to another meeting? But go ahead, Councillor Frizzle.
One more question on the Commissioner of Oaths. Is it only through a municipality office, or is there somewhere else?
No, you can get a commissioner of oaths appointment through other occupations. You'll find them in BC, the service center, like Service BC. You'll find them in other government offices that are
But
specifically.
They can't be charged there either?
I don't believe they can. I think any
So
commissioner
it
of
is-
oaths can't
it
charge
is
for service.
strictly a-
Correct.
Okay.
Except there's one very vague, unless specifically authorized by another enabling act, but that's not, doesn't pertain to us.
Thank you.
Supplemental to that, Carol Schaefer used to be a commissioner of oath when she worked at the law courts as her position. So, when you can get down at the post office, they are allowed to sign as knowing you for a passport. Is that the same as commissioner of oath?
No, that would be different.
That's different.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay, we'll just leave it at that for now. You can all stew over it, and I think there's going to be some interest from our regional district representatives.
Thank you. Is there a date council would like to bring this back?
Do you want to wait till the second meeting in September, or do you want?
There's only one meeting in September.
Oh, right. There's only. I thought we had one on the second and one.
Maybe you're right.
Yeah. The second
Thought it
and the
was the
16th are
16th.
still in my calendar.
Yeah, that's
That's
what I
right.
have too. Okay.
And 16th, yeah.
Okay.
Second meeting in September?
Second meeting in September sounds good. Thanks.
Mr. Mayor, if I could.
Yep.
So specific questions or work you would like staff to do on this prior to bringing it back?
I think specific work is to have a discussion with the regional district and have a discussion with the law firm as to what we're doing here as far as how they see this would be affecting their clients would be worthwhile, and whether or not they'd be interested in adding in more service time, to be blunt. I think also having this conversation get out into the community, maybe somebody will take on the idea of being getting notary public training. I mean, it's obviously needed here. I talked to the legal counsel for notary publics. Ironically, communities like ours see a lot of notary public action, and I'm actually surprised that there isn't one here for citizens with differing opinions. Really do use them quite a lot. So I think that there's a business opportunity for that. But also making the public aware of where the nearest ones are and finding, you know, the one in Valemont if it's still functional and the one in Kamloops or perhaps even Barrier if there is still one available. But if we're getting people from Barrier, I would assume nobody's going to spend a quarter tank or third a tank of gas to come up here to get that sign for free. Doesn't make much sense. So, but yes, I think it's more those couple items, but more about giving council time to digest this and understand all the nuances of it. Okay. Councillor Sim.
I think maybe, and I'm not sure, and it's not to create more work, but certainly to get a better understanding of exactly how much time is spent on the various sections here. Like if we're seeing a lot, but right now what we've been presented is kind of an overview without any sort of specifics. But even in the next 2 weeks is keeping track of this is where we're going, and that can maybe inform the policy. Is that worth it or not? And then I do think that to follow up on Mayor Blackwell's suggestion of how do we present the opportunity? Because you don't know what you don't know until you know. Well, but if it's assumed that it's all being handled by the District of Clearwater, but the District of Clearwater opens it up, and then surely they've got to have their different association newsletters, et cetera. Is there a way to broadcast that opportunity?
And a future educational piece in our outgoing newsletter. Mr. Prime.
Thank you, Mayor Blackwell. I just have a request to recess the committee of the whole at this time so we can move in camera
Okay.
ahead of the regular.
Yeah, so can we move it to, motion to move in camera? Councillor Fizzle, seconded by Councillor Bratton. All those in favor? Okay, and that passes.
We do, but we're gonna have to come back to it.
Okay. Okay, take a